Okay, this is my first live video presentation. This is about the new little NanoVNAs that everybody's been getting, well, maybe not everybody, but that I got excited about here a while back. And so I need to give you some pre-warnings. When I get excited and frustrated, I talk even faster. So just tell me to slow down if I get out of line. This is a NanoVNA screenshot capture in all of its glory. Now, can't you see all the great stuff there? To me, it looks like a pile of spaghetti, and trying to make sense out of it has probably scared off as many people as it's attracted, I suppose. So, but one of the things that I have experienced with this is that there's so much information out there. Some of it's even worthwhile, and some of it is just extra confusion. And so trying to sort through that, I tried to simplify this enough that I can kind of navigate. And so I want to show you, we may bounce around a couple of times trying to get to the one I want. Okay, this, which of those two screens would you like to deal with? And that's my question there. And this is the same screen as this previous one. And if you look very carefully right along here, there's kind of a yellow trace. And that's the S11, and the transmitter, if you will. And this bluish one is the second port, S21, and that is kind of the receive signal. I'm going to hold this up in front of the camera. Hopefully you can see that little gadget there. Here's the rest of it down here, but that little gadget is a filter. It's a 10 megahertz bandpass filter. Its purpose is to filter the output of a digital buffer to be able to get rid of the harmonics and a little more sine wave. It's for a GPS project I was doing. So anyway, that's my little gadget to analyze. And so what we're looking at, if I go back over here, to configure this so that you can get rid of all the extraneous stuff, there's a menu, and the particular, and you do this you can do with a little stylus and poke around on the Nano, and you can do these menus. I believe I have the entire this full screen. Maybe if I can minimize this screen a little bit, that'll help. So I can find my desktop again. Okay, this is better. Here comes the NanoVNA structure map. Yeah. I did it the long way, sorry. Let's take a sec here. Come on. Okay. Okay, this is the menu, and it's kind of a large looking menu there. And if I can get a little bit. Oh, what did I do wrong? Oh, don't want this. Sorry, guys. Jerry's updates soaked into me everywhere.
Maybe Windows is so ever so helpful.
Yes. Let's go back here. Okay. Here's the one I should have clicked. Okay. That's a clean version. This is the menu. This is I have a, Jerry, did we, or Mike, did we put those PDFs on the website?
No. There are PDFs of Cecil's presentation information, and I have them, but I didn't want to send them out to everybody because a lot of people aren't here and don't want them. But
Okay.
we can get it put up on the web, but they're not there right now.
Okay. Well, this site is called, this is an easy one to remember. It's called NanoVNA.com. And that's, there's a lot of good information. This is and the menu is to control the unit from its own screen, all directly. And there's all kinds of things you can do, but it's very tedious and going back and forth. And so most people start soon after they start playing it, wanting a larger screen. So I can actually help with that. And back over here. This is a program that's called NanoVNA Saver. And it's really very nice once you kind of get the hang of it. I'm sorry. Did someone say something? Oh, it's fine. This is controlling and talking to my VNA over here, NanoVNA. And you can see that this is set up, and it has some interesting things. You can actually set up various screens, and instead of having all that piled on one screen trying to make sense out of it, this is a Smith's chart representation of this 10 megahertz filter we're looking at. And this is the S11, S21. I'm using very simple terms, so I can understand, but if I talk down too low, just ignore me. They're still looking. I don't know everyone's level, so I'm sort of starting at my own starting level, I guess. But this is the port 1, and that's the output, and that is scanning along our frequency range of basically 1 to 20 megahertz. And it's centered on about 10.55. If the upper left-hand corner, you can see there's some frequencies up there, and that's kind of the sweep control. And so our bandpass here is right across here. So that is where our 10 megahertz signal will be going through the filter. This one up here is just return loss. And you can see return loss is also displayed down here, but I just broken it out as a separate display. And I think some people kind of have mixed emotions about return loss and VSWR. And so I've shown the VSWR graph also. And so what this represents is just layering out that jumbo we started off with. And in my cords and my mouse are getting choking each other over here. Display setup. You can actually, if you look at this, there's some settings, you know, you want dark background or light background, and what font size, line sizes, that sort of thing. And then there are 6 different categories. These are the first 4 screens that you're seeing already, and there's a couple more. And there's a raft of possibilities here that you can display. And so that can be set up. And it will resize the screens and move out to a 3x3. So I'm showing you a whole lot here all at once, but I'm trying to get us to the point where we can talk about what the VNA can do for us without getting tied up and tangled up with trying to make the little screen do it all with a stylus. So this allows us to maximize the control and do a lot more things. For example, the typical NanoVNA has 101 sample points. So if you tell it to sweep from 1 to 20 megahertz up here, I'm sorry, I'm pointing at the screen that you can't tell me. We're over on the top left corner, and you see where it says segments and says 5 there. Well, you know, this is one of the neatest features I think about this program. And this program is free. It's public domain software. That's one segment, and a segment has 101 samples in it. And so, and you notice that the step size is 190 kilohertz, almost 200 kilohertz, step to step. Well, if you were looking, this particular model will go up to about 1,000 megahertz. So if you spread 1,000 megahertz scan across, 100 segments, obviously they're about 10 megahertz apart. That's a lot of holes in the display. So, but by increasing the number of segments, for example, let's say 5, now we went from 200 kilohertz, the steps are now down to like 37. So it's getting more resolution. And I'm going to go to like 10, for example, and 10 times 101 gives us about 1,000 if I'm doing that right. So now when I tell it to sweep, watch these screens as they refill themselves. And now we're down to 18 kilohertz per step. So we're going to have about 1,000 steps. It takes a couple of seconds here. You can kind of see how it goes in little sections. That's each one of those segments is changing. And the resolution and the readability of the screens improves markedly when you do that. So now that's 1,000 point sweep, or 1,000 sample points. And so, and it'll go, I think it maybe goes to like 2,000 total, something like that. Anyway, so that is a great boost in the usability of it, where you can spread things out. You can get, there's a lot of information. It's like you're getting information from a fire hose, but you can turn some of this off. So I'm going to say, now we still have our maps, but all the numbers and data went away there. But it's still there, we can get it back. But now there are some markers we can use. And there's 3 markers. So there's a red, green, and blue. And there's some things we can do. For example, let's do, where's my thing here? I'm looking for something called Analyse, and I think the screen's just covered it up. Let me do this again. Here it is, Analyze. It was when they slid over, I lost this thing. We can click on this, and it's going to do some things that for us. This is as I said earlier, a bandpass filter. So select bandpass filter, and this is the bandpass of our filter in reality we're looking at. That's fairly wide, it's about 7 megahertz wide. It's centered on 10 megahertz. So we're going to put a marker in the middle of that, and you kind of stick it in there. And that was 9.7 meg center. And what Analyze will do for us, it will calculate the parameters of the bandpass filter here. It will find the 3 dB bandwidth, Q, and 6 dB bandwidth. and it'll show the lower side frequencies, 6 dB down, 60 dB down, the roll off, and then the upper frequencies, which are 6 and 60 dB down, so forth. And then it will run this source, presto abracadabra. And you can see now on this, over here we have some markers. Can you guys see the color differentiate? Great. So that's like our, and if you notice there's two little markers like next to each other there. That is the 6 dB point and the 60 dB. 60, yeah. The 3 and the 6 dB points are kind of, and so they're there. And so this says our center frequency is 8.8 megahertz. The 3 dB bandwidth is like 7 megahertz. And the Q quality factor is 1.25. So it's a Q of about 1.5, which also explains why this is a pretty low Q filter, but it's designed to roll off the high frequencies and give us more sinusoidal waveform than we would get coming out of a digital divider. And so that's one of the features it does for you automatically. And it also will do others: band pass, high pass, band stop, peak search, VSWR analysis. And this is a new one in this newest release. Mag loop, I think those magnetic loop antennas. So another feature. And again, all of this is coming from the VNA. So it's doing lots of things for us, but a program like this makes it much more readily accessible to us. Some other things here. We can, the calibrations we're talking about. One of the first things you're going to have to do with your shiny new VNA is calibrate it. Calibration is one of those things, it's easier to do it than it is to describe it. You know, that kind of a thing. And after a while, you've done it so many times, you don't even think about it anymore. It's kind of old hat. But there are, in the VNA world out there seem to be kind of two schools of thought. One is you don't store the calibration in your device, in your VNA. You want to do a new calibration each time so they don't carry the existing calibration. In these VNAs, the default is the opposite, where you have 5 memory locations, for example, and location 0 is the default calibration. And each time you come in, it automatically goes to that. And for new guys, that saves you having to calibrate so much. But if you want to change things, and like they tell you, this goes from 0 to 1,000, say, that's from, well, like 10 kilohertz to 1 gigahertz is the typical range. And a lot of them suggest that you calibrate it for that entire range. But if you're an HF person and you want to look at a filter at 10 megahertz, the other 990 megahertz is not of a great deal of interest. And so what you can do is enter into on the screen here in the upper left corner, put in the areas that you're interested in. And then you're able to, I'm hearing some extra voices. Is that me? Anyhow, and so calibration, I push the button here. And you notice up here, if you can follow me here, the calibration device, and it says source is the NanoVNA. So that's telling us that when I plug this in, it automatically, and fire this up, it automatically went to the calibration values I have stored. And that's, right now, that's the broad range. But when I entered this information up here, it reinterpolates and gets us down to the part we're more interested in. So you can also calibrate the device from within this program, but for tonight, I'm trying to make life simple so I don't get any more messed up than I already have. So that's a way you can do it, and the calibrations are open, short, you know, the open connector, shorted connector, and your 50 ohm load. and then a through connection and isolation thing. These are two-port calibrators. A lot of the antenna analyzers that are also VNAs are single-port analyzers. Now I know Mike's has the German one, VNWA, DG8 SAQ, something like that, and which is a very nice one. But I noticed he only has one connector actually set up for his antenna system. But a two-port, you can do filters, for example. It's a classic example because you were putting a signal into it and we're watching the signal coming out and gathering information. So all of that sort of stuff can be taken care of in this screen. It also has a calibration assistant. Okay, so that it tells you about it. I'm sorry. And so, so much for calibration. I would suggest that in the beginning, you just stay with the calibration saved in the VNA. That's just one less thing to have to keep going back and forth with. But as you get better at it and get more organized, you can do the basic calibration that they suggest, they being the consensus of opinion on the internet, highly reputable source, and do individual ones. Like I'm dealing with this stuff, and so I have this one saved in one of the user memories. And there's the default memory, which calibration is typically in, and there are 4 more memories, so you can set up. If you're working on a 2-meter antenna project, you use one for your 2-meter setup or what have you. So again, that's available.
Can you explain the ideal values?
Oh, sure. Let me go back to calibration. Now, this is from my reading, not from personal experience. Ideal values are the ideal values that the perfect analyzer can be calibrated to. You know, they're probably a fairly good ways away from practical or the normals. But some of these values here, if this was calibrated and set on here, you can see that the units here, we're talking femtodes, you know, like a 10 to the minus 15 or something like that. And so they're pretty minute values. But if you just if you wanted to play with this program and you didn't have your VNA calibrated at that point, I guess you could switch over to ideal values using this, and you would be able to do something. How accurate that would be in the real world.
I don't think you got that right, Cecil.
Oh, I hope not.
When it says use ideal values, each of these open, short, and load can be characterized even more perfectly by knowing L0, L1, L2, L3.
Yeah.
So
okay.
Use ideal values.
Thanks, Steve.
They use about a certain calibration set, and then there are ideal values for that, and they would measure in a very precise system. They would measure those values very precisely. But you know, the kinds of stuff we get, you don't get all that L0, L1, L2, L3 in the offset delay thing.
I've seen some of the store-bought super calibrated, like HP calibration sets, $2,000 to $4,000, and in your $50 Nano purchase, they don't tend to supply those.
Yes,
you just get to. So
you can from England. There's a guy that'll sell you a set that's not as expensive that has ideal values, or not ideal values, has the true calibration values. I can't think of his name, Paul. But anyway, that's what ideal means. For our 0 to 30 megahertz, it really doesn't matter. Ideal will work just fine.
Yeah. Yes. Again, I am no expert on VNAs in general, but I have learned how to find my way around through this one. And this is probably a good place to make this point. If you look at this, for example, and you see all this extra information and stuff, series L, series C, parallel R, parallel X, phase, gain, there's tons of information in there. And the VNA is giving us lots of information, but knowing what to do with the information it's giving you is kind of the other shoe dropping, as it were. So if you remember back in your college days, complex numbers and all that, and I know many of you are engineering backgrounds, but it's a good refresher for that. My first encounter with a VNA type of a device was in the Air Force when I was stationed in Turkey in like 1966, and it was in a 6-foot roll-around rack. I could look at the screen eye to eye, and that kind of thing for a system I worked on. And then I had a nearly 60-year hiatus from them, as it were. So it's been a great learning experience. It's brought back a lot of things I once knew and forgotten about Smith charts and all that. And I feel like I need to go refresh myself more on the basic stuff. But there's also some interesting things that I have gotten interested in, and the HF antenna. I'm in an area where I can't put up a tower, and I didn't feel bad about that, particularly because I've been there and done that. But I do want some kind of an HF antenna. So I've been looking at and playing around with the in-fed half-wave dipole type, or in-fed half-wave antenna. And with doing this, all the things here where you kind of come together, to coming up, the classic definition of resonance in my mind has always been when X and L cancel each other out and you got R0, if it were. And that doesn't seem to actually work out in reality sometimes on here. When you have values like 44.9 plus J 3.5, and then you don't see a lot of perfect 50 ohms on here. Some, but not too often. And so there's more to the story than meets the eye. What I like about this, for one reason, is I'm kind of a visual learner, and the graphical presentations convey a lot of information, more than I could readily calculate, or even unreadily calculate. But it's giving us access to a lot of information that in the right hands could be quite valuable, I'm sure. But again, there's more and more things you can do with it. Are you getting up to eyeball level, or should I move on to another topic, or is there more you would like to see about this?
Would you be willing to take any questions if people have?
Sure, I'd love to. I don't guarantee great answers, but stand by, Steve.
It might give you some thought of a direction to go if there's an area that people are particularly interested in. Maybe you're not prepared to answer it, but just throw that out there. Perhaps anybody have any general question about an antenna analyzer? You'll need to unmute your mics to ask. If not, then Cecil, I would continue with where you were headed.
Okay.
We've got another half hour or so total, I think.
Oh yeah.
But are there any questions? Anybody?
Hey, Cecil.
Oh, is there anything you need to do to connect the NanoVNA to the computer? Because every single time I try to plug mine in, it says there's nothing found.
Oh, okay. Yes. Let's talk about that. They're USB connected, and there is a USB COM port driver that the micro in this is STM, and So you need to get their thing. If what works quite often, if you haven't been doing too much, is just go to your normal screen. You just look, you're sitting there on Windows or whatever your flavor you prefer, and just plug in the Nano and turn it on and see what happens. On Windows, quite often, it will suddenly realize you just plugged in a USB device, and it'll go through and try to find the thing. And oftentimes they'll ask you if you want to let it look for it for you. And more times than not.
Cecil?
Yeah.
Josh, there is an on-off switch on the NanoVNA.
I've done it with both on and both. I've done it both times with either on or off, and it just doesn't register at all.
Yeah, okay, so you found the little switch. That it's surprising how many people ask about it, and that's often the answer.
Yeah. The cure for that, I find, is to unplug it from the computer and start over again. Make sure it's on. Make sure the computer's doing its thing and it's ready to go, and plug in and try again. And if you wait long enough, it'll usually recognize that the device has been plugged in. And it'll ask you, what do you want to do? And let it search. And quite often, in my experience, it'll find it. If it finds something else that it doesn't like, then you'll push your tail around for a while. There's a little program, and it's called USB View. I think it's you get it from Microsoft online, their stuff. And if you haven't used it before, it will show you all the active USB connections in your computer. A little graph comes up, and it'll show you what's connected and what's not, and that it identifies them. And then you can find your device there, but sometimes it doesn't know what to do with it. So you got to redo the software driver. Does that help, Josh?
A little bit. I'll have to play around with it some more, I think.
What is the chip that they use in the NanoVNA for the interface for the USB to serial port converter? What do they use?
It is, I think it's software driven out of the micro.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, there's not a lot of chips in the thing. So, I'm trying to think the fastest way to find here. On that one NanoVNA website I was on, let me see if I can get back to that here. Come on. New structure. Oh, that's menu. I was thinking there's a like a hardware app here, but block diagram. I've been to too many of these sites; they all kind of blur together after a while.
Is he out there?
Yes.
Bruce, this one, they're all variations of this, but that's basically the layout. Find one, maybe a bigger one here. This is probably.
Oh, yeah, it goes right into the STM32, huh?
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Yes. There's a 32, STM32. This one's the 07, F07. And the newer ones, the second generation, now are using the 03. Which has it's pin compatible. Some guys have actually updated it, but you can. It has more memory, things like that. So the software is not compatible or not as compatible. So if you're gonna, like when I talk about recommendations for buying, I recommend you start with the 03 because it's going to have future expandability. And so, but there is, here's another one. Just you saw this one in one of my photos on there, and this one is another one that also uses the 03 chip, and this one is made by BH5HMU engineering ham guy in China. Nice fella. And this is my favorite one. I have this one too. What I like about it best is that it's a much bigger screen. It's a 4.3 screen, 800 by 400 resolution, and it's very similar to an iPhone, or not an iPhone, I mean your Android or what have you, but it's very similar to like my cell phone, very high resolution, and it is actually a metal case, and it's extruded aluminum or extruded something, and it's in metal, so it's fully shielded, very, very sturdy, well done. So it is in about the $125 to $150 price range. Where the one I've been using down here doing all this stuff tonight is the one I typically recommend, and it's like R&L Electronics over in Ohio, one of our neighbors here. They sell that line, and it is like 65, 64 or something like that. Does that sound about right, Bob? I think $65, give or take a couple bucks. And it has one nice feature too, that it has a built-in 16 gigabyte flash drive. It's like the chip is actually on the board, and you can plug it into your Windows 10 or what have you, and it comes up as a USB flash drive, and it has FAT compatible file system, so you can copy, drop, and drag, stuff. So doing an update is a click, click, drop, and you're on your way, and so that's pretty cool. Any other questions along this line? I'll go off to some other software stuff.
Just one comment.
Sure.
Am I turned on here? I just did a little Googling. The ST Microsystems driver for everything but Windows 10 is available from their site. They say with Windows 10, the driver is part of Windows, and Windows should be able to find it.
Yeah.
So for Windows 10, and I don't know how it works with any other thing like a Mac.
From my own experience, I've found that most of the time when I have trouble, it's because it's tried to associate itself with something else. I've clicked on the wrong place, or once you get confused, it's harder to get it unconfused.
Well, you do have to go into the program and tell it what COM port to use, yes. Correct? Once the driver is installed, you have to go into the device manager and look and see where it installed that, what COM port. Then you have to go into the software and say, this is a COM port I want you to use.
Yes. Now the nice big software package I was showing you, let me get back to that. This guy, down here on the lower left thing, you can see where it says COM6. That's the port on my computer that has the STM drivers, and it identifies the VNA as a NanoVNA.
Did you have to put that in, or did it find it okay?
It found it, and see, it has a rescan button, and rescan causes it to go out and literally rescan just to make sure. And then see, I'm still connected. So it automatically found it and connected and you're up and going. So that helps. That it's no different than trying to do a USB setup for half a dozen other programs out there. So it took, I think, a couple of tries, but it's pretty straightforward. Pretty straightforward. Let me shift a little gear or two here. I want to get one more thing on here. It's always so much slower when you want it to go. Okay. Are you seeing this document here?
Yep.
Okay. This, right before your very eyes here, this is the NanoVNA. This is the first one. It was a 2.8-inch screen, and they were like as cheap as $35 to $40, cloned by the truckload. No boat, probably more like boatload, but so they're copied all over the place. But I got one of those originally. I thought, well, heck, for $40, if it never shows up, it won't be a total loss. But I got it, and the software is compatible with it up through the Nano H. So this is kind of the first. Now there were other homemade versions and smaller things, but the NanoVNA that kind of took hold that we've been talking about, it starts with these two guys in terms of volume and sales and acceptance. This
you're pointing with your hand. Can you point with your?
Yes, I'm trying to do the mouse. I'm sorry. I'm an old school teacher. I'm used to pointing the chalkboard. Okay, so this is the original one, and the one I have is in a box here, but it's lacking a few of the niceties, but it works fine. And this is the latest NanoVNA. This is current version, what have you, of that same first run. That's the 07 micro. And this one, the H, has been subtly improved in hardware, mainly to lower the noise floors and the self-generating stuff like that. And so it's a very competent little box. And the software updates for the Nano H popped right into my old one, and it took right off. Now there's things my old one still isn't going to do because it doesn't have all the oomph to get to where that software can go these days. But at least it's compatible. Now, when you switch over to the Nano H4, which is what I'm using here tonight, it and the Nano F share the same processor, and the software is not totally compatible, but as far as the menus and how you use it and that sort of thing, they're very, very similar. They all come from a guy by the name of Eddie555 in Japan, who wrote the first version of the Nano software, what became the Nano software. And so he sold a kit to build all this. So anyway, that's where it started from. And he helps support these guys, both of these guys, so in terms of software. And this one, the H4, is what I'd usually recommend. And I know several of you have gotten them. And so it's, I'd say about $65, $64. The Nano H is like $10 cheaper, but the $10 buys you the newer microprocessor with more software space. And this is a 4-inch screen over here versus a 2.8. And when you're down in those little screens, 4 inches is a huge increase. Yeah, so, and the NanoVNA F, it's a 4.3 screen with about twice the resolution. And so that's kind of what I call generation 2. And generation 2 is still growing, still developing, new software coming out. And the software support has been really good. This last one here is the NanoVNA 2, and this is a whole different animal. This one goes up to 3.3 gigahertz, and actually they're eking it up a little more all the time. But it is a wholesale departure from the existing ones. The other nanos up here at the beginning, they use the SI53 or 5153, or is it 5351? The little $1.50 chip that's synthesized. It goes up to like 150 or so on its fundamental frequencies. And then they use multiples of harmonics. And they're currently up to like 1.5 gig. So this one uses an SI5351 up to about 140, 150 megahertz fundamental mode. And then it's got a whole separate different chip in it, which is the analog devices 43451. I may be off a hair on that number. And it is a synthesized, you know, DDS, whatever you want to call it. But it puts out fundamental frequencies from actually about 35 megahertz is where it actually starts, up to about 4 to 4.5 gigahertz. And so if you're interested in those higher frequencies, this is the guy you're interested in. It has different software, obviously, and it like the NanoVNA, the program I've been using to show you a lot of stuff lately. I'm sorry, I'm doing well, let me go back. It's big fancy software that use it with everything. It's available. It's a different software. I don't think it's quite as fully developed, and there's not a lot of choices. There's not as many choices in software, but it's coming along. I mean, guys are picking it up, and a lot of people want to have the higher frequency, so it's becoming popular. And Steve, you would appreciate that. This one is the cheaper version, but there is a version, and Randall has electronics and has it. I think it's out of stock currently, but they have it with the Type-In connectors and set up for Type-In. And still, it's about $70. The pricing is really hard to beat, you know. And so there are two prime movers here. The NanoVNA F here is a guy named Lyon something, and BH5HNU is his call, and he's very supportive and very good about support. And the other ones are made by a fellow whose name is Hugent, H-U-G-E-N-T. You'll hear his name mentioned. He shows up on the various forums, and he's very supportive, and you know, he does a good job of support, marketing, and software. So in this clone world, there's so much that you don't know what you're getting. I mean, you know, if they make a perfect clone and all runs the same software, but there's a lot of little extras that get left out, not as much bypassing, not spending as much time trying to track down noise sources and things like that. So, and they're there this week, they may not be there next week, you know, and so you got those issues. But staying in this family, and the other thing I'll tell you is currently delivery for like this NanoVNA F is up to 90 to 120 days, you know, because of all the coronavirus, the shipping, the flight regulations, and then the lithium-ion batteries create problems with customs and stuff. And so the Nano 4, the stuff from Randall, he actually stocks them, And I remember once I even got a note from Hugen, I'm sorry, telling me that Randall stock was back up if I still wanted something. So I buy it. I've never met the people. I've never been there. And my only connection is they had 2-day service for delivery, and the prices were cheaper than a lot of the Chinese importers. So, so if you're interested in, or maybe considering buying one, the Nano H4 would be my recommendation. And I think that's for the value and starting out and all that kind of stuff. I think it's well shielded inside, and it's a fully encased cover around it. The first one was actually 2 printed circuit boards stacked together, and you could look through the side. You could run quarters and drop screws in there, you know, all kinds of no things. So, but I personally have the F model. I think the construction and the high resolution and all that is what was worth it to me. But I like I say, they all work, and accuracy. And Steve and I had talked about this once. Kind of the standard out there for a lot of folks are the HP products, even the older ones, you know, what have you. And I've seen lots of side-by-side traces where something was scanned with the NanoVNA, and then same item, same cables, you know, moved over to the HP and properly calibrated, and the same trace. Maybe a wiggle here that wasn't there, but I mean, you know, 99.9% or something slightly less, but very, very capable. And the thing, I think Gary was making this point about precision and accuracy aren't necessarily the same thing. But the 3 that I have pretty much agree. The older one, it actually puts out less power than the other. So, but when you adjust for the power difference, it's still the same levels, you know, relatively speaking. But
okay, Cecil, that's coming up on probably about out of time. That sounds like a good point, maybe to wrap this up.
Okay, I'm sorry I got off on such a rough start there.
That's all right. We worked through it.
Cecil? Cecil?
Yeah.
I just looked at RNL. It's $59.95 for the H4.
H4?
Yeah, $59.95.
Is it on special right now? Because that sounds cheaper.
Let me look again. Hold on.
I don't know if you noticed, but RNL, apparently, they just rotate through their stock and have a special, usually $10 off. I see your mouth moving, but I don't hear you, Gary.
You got muted there, Gary.
Oh, okay. Well, it does not say special, so I guess that's just what they're selling it for. It doesn't say special at all.
Okay.
Prices dropped over the last month then, or 6 weeks. Yeah.
That's a heck of a unit for the money, I have to say.
Yeah.
Yeah. I see. Bob has one, and Mike has one, and I'm not sure. Josh, are you still there? Which version? I know Josh has one. I'm not sure which version.
Cecil,
Yeah.
could you scroll down a moment to see some of the other resource links that you found interesting and useful?
Oh, okay, sure. Jerry, if you're going to go to sleep on us, just run us off.
I'm good.
Okay, the NanoVNA, that one is the one I was referring to some things here tonight, where we had found, where I have a note there. It says menu map. That's that one. The one below that it's in Hungary, HA3HZ, and there's a note there that says select the English flag, and he'll come up in English. And he's kind of an interesting guy. He kind of keeps track of the software. It's kind of his contribution to the common cause. And so he has a lot of good information, and it's the kind of place where you have to do a lot of looking through it, but you'll usually find something that's worth the effort. So the second one is Wes Hayward, W7ZOI, in the Portland area. Wes writes a lot of articles for QST and a lot of other things. I'm kind of a fan of Wes's, but he has one of these, and he was trying it out, and he did a nice little presentation there. And if you go to his website, well, the link will take you there. And he's showing some common ham things like measuring Q, looking for resonance, crystal filter, crystal characterizations, that sort of stuff. So well worth a browse. The Gunther one, this one here, is the it's 3 parts. The first part's about the NanoA. The second part is about the Nano Saver program I was using, and the third part is a focus on standalone operations, things you can do, like taking this out in your backyard and working on your antenna, that sort of thing. And it's very detailed and pretty well written. The Nano GitHub is where you can get the NanoVNA program. And right below that is where the Linux folks can get the program too. They have a new thing, it's new to me. I dabble in Linux, but I'm not certainly versed in it. But where they've been doing binary files that are, they send them out. It's the full binary, and it's in a zip. You just unzip it, plop it on your desktop, and click it, and it's up and running. And it really makes it easy to install, as opposed to having to install Python and then to build it. And the next thing, the GitHub NanoVNA Saver, that's the Linux version. And then there's the RNL store and a little blurb about that. And this last one, Jerry recommended. I think it came from you, Jerry, via Mike, right? Oh, anyway, it's a good site too. And so there are, like I said, there are tons and tons of sites, but I tried to go through and pick out some for you that I had found useful to me. And the one last thing I'll tell you, there is a Groups.io on Google. It's called, if you go, just go to Groups.io and then look for a group, and it's the NanoVNA users group, and there's a NanoVNA F users group. I will warn you that the NanoVNA users group is prolific. They have about 7,000 or 8,000 guys. They have like 15,000 messages in less than a year, and they get long-winded and go off on tangents and all that. But despite all that, there's some nuggets in there if you're lucky enough to find them. That's great.
So you can provide this file. We can put it up on the.
I made a copy, and I don't know if Mike's still with us, but Mike hasn't. And he's going to put it into the website.
Okay, great, very good. With that, I think we should call it at this point. I'll
sorry for going so long
here momentarily. I will upload this to YouTube, and I'll send out a link to it so people can review parts of it. They might want to see you again.
If you want to use a pair of scissors on the starting part, feel free.
All right, I'll see what I can do.
All right, thanks, guys.
Thank you, Cecil. Thanks for putting all that together. It's really interesting stuff.
Okay.
And very helpful, Cecil. I appreciate everything you did.
Thank you, Cecil.
Thanks. Thank you, Cecil.
Thank you.
Bye.
That's
Good night,
great.
guys.
So much. Great.
Bye. Good night.
All right. Good night, everyone.
Hey, Josh, call me.
Okay. Maybe we're got the radio.